Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Friday Night Drive Week 4 preview podcast. I'm Josh Welge. I'm here with Steve Soucie. We're going to have Joe Aguilar from the Northwest Herald joining us pretty soon. Steve, how you doing, man?
Not too bad. Getting ready for Week 4 here.
Yeah, wow. How about it? I don't like saying we're a third of the way through the season. I like to say it's still a long way till Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah, that it is. But, I mean, like I said, we're starting to get some definition with some of these teams. And that's one of the parts of this process I really like is that you don't have the complete read, but you've got a pretty good read on a lot of these programs. And every week brings some different games to the table that define it a little bit more. But once we get 3, 4, 5 weeks deep into this thing, we start to see what some of these teams really are. And obviously, teams can jump up and surprise you. It happens all the time. But for right now, you're starting to get that, I always kind of classify the, I'm going to go old here. You're going to see how old I kind of classify it as a Polaroid picture. Like at the beginning of the season, that thing is all dark and you don't know exactly what it looks like. Now you're shaking it a little bit. And you're starting to see a little bit of that clarity around the edges. So this is part of the season that I really enjoy.
Yeah, that's the part that I do like as we get deeper into the season is you learn more about these teams. Obviously, when teams keep winning, you get some sort of a build-up. As we go into Week 4, there's a number of 3-0 matchups that we're going to talk about later in the podcast. So that is the part that I do like. And, obviously, weather starts to get a little bit chillier, even though this week is not that case. But a lot to look forward to in Week 4. Before we get started talking about some of the matchups for this weekend, as we've done the last few weeks, wanted to kind of touch on just where we are with the playoff picture. Steve, you released your updated playoff projections this morning on Friday Night Drive. And one of the things that I've always found fascinating in the last few years, because you just didn't see it too much before the last few years, is the idea of having teams with 4 and 5 records reach the postseason. Last year, not too many. It turned out, I believe turned out one, right? 1 4 and 5 team ended up making the playoffs.
Yes.
But Steve, as we sit here on September 17th, going into Week 4, you like the odds of some 4 and 5 teams getting creeping in there, and it looks like it just basically comes down to math.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, with the dwindling number of teams that are participating, in playoff eligible football, we're under 500. We've been under 500 for a while, and you start to think about it. Okay, I mean, in order to qualify by traditional standards, you have to be at least 5 and 4. Well, we don't have enough schools by simple math, to have enough schools finishing above 500. With 492 playoff schools, if you half that, it's 245, 246. So if you just think of it by simple math, one team wins, one team loses every week. You get 245 winners, you get 245 losers. Obviously, that number is a little bit different because of out-of-state opponents, but we need 256 teams to get into the field. So, just math, if you start sliding that number rule around, you're like, well, we're only going to have a certain number of teams that get to 9-0, a certain number of teams to 8-1. There are going to be teams that take some of those wins up that end up getting 3 wins, 2 wins, 1 wins. So when you start passing those wins around, you realize that there aren't really enough wins to go around unless we do extraordinarily well as a state and basically win all of the out-of-state games that are being played. That's really the only way that you can get to a situation where you've got more 5-win teams than you need to fill that field. So I actually think last year may have been an outlier in terms of there was only 1. I think we're looking at a situation that as long as we're in this range of where we only have 485 to 490 playoff eligible teams, and then certain other constrictors that the Chicago Public League have on qualifying teams, I don't really see a way that we're going to have a lot of years in the near future where, as long as we're in this system where we have just 5-win teams and above, I think we're going to need 4-win teams. It's just a matter of how many.
If I'm not mistaken, I know we ended up last year with 1 4 and 5 team, but if you would have told Steve Soucie at week 7 or so of last year, you were projecting more than 1 at the time, if I'm not mistaken. Certainly.
I pretty much all the way down the stretch last year, I was between 5 and 9 teams that were kind of in that boat, which I thought was going to happen. We actually had a weird thing happen like last year that was the exact opposite of the year previous, where like every 4-4 team that needed to win in week 9 did. And like every year, if you go back and look in past history, that does not happen. There are upsets. There are teams that lose to teams that are 6-2. I mean, which is what probably should happen. All those 4-4 teams won last year, and there were people that were on that fence that knew they were going to finish 4-5 with a lot of playoff points. They were like contacting me over the weekend. They're like, "It's going away, isn't it?" And I'm like, "Yes, it is." And there were reasons for that. I mean, there was even a situation where a 6-2 team forfeited to a 4-4 team. So, I mean, that was just a scenario that you could not have planned for. You look at that on paper, you're like, the 6-2 team is going to knock that team to 4-5. You know, that was just logic, and it looked like that was going to happen. And then we get to Friday afternoon, and it was a forfeit. So, I mean, those are scenarios that you can't plan on when you're trying to like figure this all out. But like I said before, it just looks like over time the math isn't mathing when you start thinking about we need to get 250 teams to 5 wins. I have a hard time believing that the math is going to work in a way to make that happen.
Because I think, like you said, we need 256 teams for the playoffs to have playoffs. And I think you had written today that there's currently 245 teams that are above 500, which I'm not great at math. I'm okay at math. That's not 256. So we need that number. One thing that I saw is that you anticipate a little bit more data, a little more knowledge after week 5 and week 7. What about those weeks?
Well, that's because you come into the same situation with being above 500 because you can do the math on that. When you get to week 5, you've got the list of teams that are 3-2 and above. So then you can get an idea. Okay, those qualifiers need to go, but the teams below it at 2-3. In order to get to 5 wins, they need to go 3-1 the rest of the way. It's not even going to be mathematically possible for all those 2-3 teams to do that, and they're not. So it gives you a real good construct when you look at after week 5, you look at the teams that are 3-2 and above and say, okay, 90% of these teams are probably going to make the playoffs. They only need to go 2-2 the rest of the way. All right, and then you look at the list below and say the 2-3 teams, they obviously need to go 3-2 over the remain, or better than that. They need to go 3-1 if they're 2-3 to get to 5-4. That's obviously not going to happen in many situations. And then you can even go further down the line and look at the 1-4s and say, are any of these teams going to win their last 4 games? So you can kind of get a little snapshot in your mind going, okay, this is the most logical number range of teams that are actually going to get to 5 wins. And you can do that after 5. You can do that after 7 because you have the odd number saying, okay, these are the teams that are at 4-3 that need to go 1-1 over the last situation. The 3-4 teams need to win both of their games. How many of these teams is it even possible for them to do that? Do they play another 3-4? I mean, so then you can really zero in after 7 in terms of where you think that final line is going to fall. But in calculating what you think, it's the odd numbered weeks that you can do that the best because you get a real good look at, okay, these teams are below 500. What is it going to take for them to get to the standard at this point? How many teams are above that line and likely to still get there? You still look at the 3-2 or when you get to the 4-3s exactly say, are these teams at least going to split in your mind? Are they going to get to 5? Some of those teams, no, they're not going to split. They may lose both of those games. So if you just do it, because I'm weird about this, I will do that. I'll look at every one of the teams and say, do I think they're going to make it? Do I think they're going to make it? Put a little X on the box, add up the X's, and that tells me roughly where I think the 4 or 5 line is going to be. I do that after 5. I do that after 7. I did that after 3, even though the data is a long ways out. But what the data is telling me right now, 5 to 8 teams would be my estimate right now if you ask me.
Very good. Yeah, everybody check out Souce's playoff projections again on FridayNightDrive.com. It's there right now as we continue to progress throughout the season. Suits, I think we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll discuss some McHenry County football with Joe Aguilar and then look ahead to some of the Week 4 games.
I'm State Representative Steve Reich. Since 2017, I've led the fight to reform our child welfare system and supported educational choice for every kid in Illinois. I've worked to stop the collapse of our public pensions while standing up for businesses that are being crushed by crippling mandates. And I've never forgotten who pays the bill. The work isn't finished, and as I run for re-election, I'm asking for your support. I'm Steve Reich, and I approve this message.
SGKR Injury Attorneys tackles the toughest cases. I'm Matt Rundio. When life throws a flag, we go on offense to protect your rights. Don't get sidelined. Score a touchdown with SGKR. Visit us at sgkr.law.
At Oliver's, we are proud to serve our community. We serve up great customer service, quality products, ease of shopping, and we serve up delicious barbecued sandwiches at our fundraiser cookouts. So stop by Oliver's, 748 North Brenton and Dixon, and help fund our local clubs and events.
In Illinois and into Iowa, the story of Shaw Media is a story of trust. Since 1851, we've been informing, connecting, and reflecting the communities we serve, large and small, rural and urban, suburban, and river towns alike. With dozens of local newspapers, radio stations, magazines, and specialty brands like Friday Night Drive and Starved Rock Country, we meet people wherever they are. We shine a light on local government. We celebrate Friday night touchdowns. We tell the stories that shape your day, from neighborhood heroes to the Chicago Bears. But what truly sets us apart? It's our people. The award-winning journalists, broadcasters, and storytellers who live here, work here, and care deeply about what matters most to you. We don't just report the news. We're part of the fabric of the places we serve, from the Mississippi to the Illinois, from the Fox all the way to the chain of lakes. Trusted for generations, still earning it every day. Shaw Media, your most trusted local source.
Back here on the Friday Night Drive Week 4 preview podcast, Josh Welge here with Steve Soucie, and we're bringing in Joe Aguilar from the Northwest Herald. Joe, how you doing, sir?
Good, Josh. Souce, how you guys?
Not too bad.
Doing well. Can't complain. We won't talk any Bears. We'll just move right into high school. Joe, I think the big story coming out of Week 3 in McHenry County, or one of the big stories, the return of Logan Abrams at running back, not just playing defense. He came back last week. I think he ran for over 100 yards. No coincidence, I don't think. Cary Grove got their first win of the season.
Yeah, that was the big story of the week, Josh, up here in McHenry County. I mean, he's a game changer. He changes the outlook of the conference. Now, Cary Grove has already played Prairie Ridge. They got a big test Friday. I'll be there at Burlington Central. And that's, I think PR should win, but who knows? We'll find out. But that's the game this week. But Cary Grove now 1-2. But yeah, Logan Abrams, who suffered the Linz Frank injury last year and then was out the first 2 weeks. He did play defense in week 1 because of a hamstring. Did not play in week 2. Comes back and showed what he can do. As you mentioned, 175 on the ground, big touchdown, knocked the helmet off of a McHenry kid. He's just that kind of player, 6'3", 230, difference-making fullback. And, they could win out here, Cary Grove. He's that kind of a difference maker because I had mentioned, I think, last week with you guys, without him, they don't have that kind of player. A few players do. That's why he's a special player.
Yeah, he's a big-time player, big kid. I'll tell you, pretty big-time player for Richmond Burton you got to see last week. That's not 6'3". Joseph Larson, 5'8", 135 pounds. Pretty big game for that young man last week with 4 interceptions and a pick 6.
4 picks. Yeah, I mean, the kid he just looks like a little high school kid. But 4 interceptions, I've never seen it, guy. I think the state record, I had to look it up afterward, is 6. But 4 in a game, including a pick 6, that was really the momentum-changing play in that Richmond Burton. It ended up being 49-14 against Johnsburg. Johnsburg beat Richmond Burton, which won the conference last year, the Kishwaukee River Conference. But Larson, the funny thing on that pick 6 that he had, Ryan Franz, who's one of the best receivers in the area, he's an all-state caliber kid, bobbled the ball. He probably hadn't done that since he was 3. And it popped right into the hands of Larson. He went the other way, 60 yards, something like that. Returned it, and then he got 3 more. Kept looking at him like, was that 8 again? Was that number 8 again on the pick? You know how the 6 and the 8s and the 9s, sometimes you can't tell them apart. But he had quite a night to remember. I'm guessing that's got to be a McHenry County record. According to IHSA records, I don't think a McHenry County player had ever had that many interceptions in a game, but he certainly had a night to remember. And I think afterward, you see, talking to him, he was just kind of very matter of fact about it. But I told him, I go, well, you'll be the talk of the town this weekend and all next week with 4 picks. So good for that young man.
Soucie, I think you were noting last Friday, I think you were surprised that wasn't like a bigger record.
Well, yeah, I went to and I said, well, maybe somebody got 5, but I'd be shocked to find. And I went to the list, and it only ties him for 9th place all time. 8 different people have gotten more than 4 in a game. I was like, I was mystified by that, to be completely. I was like, well, maybe somewhere along the line, maybe somebody got 5. And I was sitting there trying to think about it myself, and I've been covering high school football in some way, shape, or form now for nearly 30 years, and I've never seen anyone get 3. Yeah. So I was completely thrown by that.
Yeah. No, what a performance by that kid, getting a win for Richmond Burton. They're off to a really good start to the year. Joe, you alluded to it previously, big game Friday night at Rocket Hill, Prairie Ridge, paying a visit to Burlington Central. Both of those teams 3-0. I think Burlington's going for the first 4-0 start in 21 years, I believe. What do you make about that matchup?
I'm excited to see it. It's going to be crazy crowded there. Get there early if you're going. It's one of those games. And Burlington Central is a big football team. They have a tackle, Zach Hulkren, who's going to Miami, Ohio. He's their left tackle, but defensively they're big. Aiden Nuno's a really good player. So they're big, and they're really tough defensively. They're probably the best defensive team in the Fox. But now they have the big challenge, and I talk about him every week, it seems like, whether it's with you guys or somebody else. It's Luke Vanderweel, the Prairie Ridge quarterback, who had 2 more touchdowns last week. They played Hampshire, which is, not a great program right now. They're rebuilding. But Luke is special. The question is, can they stop him? And I don't know if anyone can stop him. If anyone can stop him, it might be this football team at Central, the Rockets. So it'll be a real good football game come Friday night.
Any other games you got an eye that you'll be watching specifically on Friday when you're at Rocket Hill that you're going to be keeping an eye on, Joe?
Back to the KRC, I mean, Marengo plays Woodstock. Those are not state perennial powers or anything like that. They're normally both, Woodstock has struggled the last several years. Not like winless seasons kind of thing, but, they get their 2, maybe 3 wins, and they're 3-0. And Marengo, which is always right around that 5-win mark they get in, they're 3-0. So one's going to be 4-0, with still some other games on the schedule that they should win, pretty convincingly, I would think. So I think that's an interesting one. Again, it's not a marquee matchup. I don't think people are going to be buzzing all over, Twitter about what's going on in the Marengo Woodstock game. But up here, I think it's an interesting battle because, again, these are programs that aren't used to being in this position, 3-0. And that's fun to see because it's something different. And we talk about it every week. I think we talked about it last week, how confidence is such a big thing. It's big in the NFL. We, talk about the Bears or lack of it. So it's good, and that should be an interesting game for me. Again, not a marquee match. And then I want to see what Cary Grove does too. They got Huntley, which is undefeated, but they really haven't dominated anyone per se. They've got a lot of good production from their sophomore running back, Chase Hajinaki, I think is how you pronounce his last name. He's had 100 yards in every game this season. But now Cary Grove, has the ship been righted? And hopefully Logan Abrams is good to go. He's healthy. And again, not just for Cary Grove's sake, he's good for the conference. And you want to see great players play. And so I think a healthy Logan Abrams is not only good for Cary Grove, but the Fox Valley. So I'll have my eyes on that one too, Cary Grove playing against Huntley.
No doubt. A lot of good stuff on Friday night. That's Joe Aguilar from Northwest Herald. He covers McHenry County. Joe, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Steve, as we kind of look statewide, I believe there's 16 matchups on Friday pitting undefeated teams. One of the really big ones I think is that Loyola Brother Rice game. Loyola, we kind of wondered how they would do in week 3 after being off for a week, and then they didn't play an Illinois team in week 1. I think they really impressed, handling St. Francis pretty handily by a few touchdowns on the road. And then Brother Rice, I mean, geez, they've answered all comers so far. That should be a, kind of a good indicator in that Catholic league.
With Brother Rice in specific, they have really, really impressed me out of the gates. this is a team that I think came into the season understanding that they kind of had to prove to people that they belonged in kind of the elite conversation. And I think they've done that so far. They've been very dominant in all of their games so far. Impressive, easier wins, to be completely honest, over St. Rita and Marist than I expected. I didn't know what to expect out of their opening game in Indiana. You never know with those things, but they were pretty darn dominant in that game too. If you would have told me before the season that I would go into this game thinking to myself, Brother Rice is hosting Loyola, and in my mind, if you would have said, I think this is a coin flip game, I would have said, nah, I don't think I'm ready to go there yet. But I think I am now. I think this on paper looks like to me to be a very, very good game, a very competitive game. It would not surprise me either way that this game went. And a lot of times I can't say that. I usually have a pretty strong lean. This one, I'll take the cop out. I think this is a genuine coin flip. I'm not sure who's going to win this game.
Yeah, like in that CCL blue, it's sort of like, okay, Loyola and Mount Carmel and Brother Rice they're like pushing up, and we'll see. I mean, that should be a matchup that we're all watching on Friday night. Our Russ Hodges will be there for that game on Friday night. Another one in the Catholic League, Nazareth IC Catholic Prep. Nazareth, interesting situation. They go from last week, they were in a game where they were sort of like, I hate to call a team with this, but they were like the little brother trying to see if they could compete against a team a little bit above them in the pecking order of Mount Carmel. Weren't quite able to get it done. They lose by a few touchdowns. Now they're sort of like the big brother this week, where they go to IC Catholic, a team that, hey, I mean, they're 3-0. They had a nice win over St. Ignatius. I know they missed the playoffs last year. I know Nazareth handled them pretty easily last year, but this seems to be like a different IC Catholic team. They got the quarterback that's putting up big numbers, Nate Lang. He's got a lot of receivers. They just throw into. They actually beat Nazareth a couple years ago. What do you think of that matchup?
It's interesting. I feel like IC Catholic was really, not that they're out trumpeting themselves all the time, but I just felt they were really quiet in the offseason. I didn't really hear a lot about them. I knew that this was a pretty young core. They liked the talent, and they believed that they could be pretty good. But even early, like late in the preseason, it was like the conversation was kind of at least with me, we just got to get to 5. We like our chances in the postseason 3A if we can make it there. And it was a big sort of like if situation. I mean, they're sitting here at 3-0 right now. They're in great position to take care of that if proposition. But I'm fascinated to see, how close are they to being at Nazareth's level? Are they there already? I mean, I think they might. I think they might, honestly, if you ask them point blank, I think they might be a little ahead of schedule where they thought they would be. Like I said, in terms of like having some younger guys that needed to step up into bigger roles in terms of how they're responding. And as for Nazareth, I went and saw them for a little bit in their opening week game at Kankakee, and it looked like they still had some work to do, to be completely honest. It wasn't as sharp as a Nazareth product that I'm usually used to seeing. It looks like they've worked out a lot of those kinks, to be completely honest with you. I think this is a really good football team. I think they're going to be heard from in 6A when it's all said and done. And this is for a really interesting measuring stick, I think, especially for IC Catholic, but even a little bit for Nazareth too, to just kind of figure out where they are going over the second half of the season.
You mentioned IC Catholic's young talent. I've followed that program for a number of years. They're a program that's never been afraid to play young kids. And usually those young kids are very, very talented young kids. So, we'll see what happens. Obviously, a really big test for them this week with Nazareth coming to town. Ton of great matchups in the Catholic League this week. The other one this week that I'm going to be honest with is I was kind of examining it to see who I wanted to pick, and I still can't figure it out. Fenwick at Montini, both of those teams 3-0, both of them coming off of really good wins. Fenwick beat Joliet Catholic. Of course, Montini got a goal line stand to beat Marist last week. That is a really big win for Montini. I know Marist has lost a few games this year, but still for a team 3A, 4A, 5A type to beat a Marist is still a pretty big achievement. Both of these teams have great quarterbacks. Izzy Abrams for Montini, Jamin Williams for Fenwick. I mean, to me, this is a definition of a toss-up.
Yeah, I agree. With Fenwick, it was before the season. I was like, this team has been really reliant on Nate Marshall over the last couple of years. Nate Marshall's in Michigan now. And so I was like, well, how do they adapt? How do they deal with this? They were pretty impressive coming out of the gates, granted, against opponents that were, a little bit below them in the food chain. And then going into that Joliet Catholic game, it was kind of like, all right, here's a show me game. And they performed extremely well in that game, especially in the second half, showed up. And now you look at it now, and I've almost, not that I thought they were a bad football team, but I've had to change my perception over the last couple of weeks on what I think they could potentially do, because I think this is a really, really good team that can eventually make some noise. It makes for just kind of an interesting situation when you look across there at Montini. These are two more programs that, based on the terrible difficulty inside of their schedules, one of the underlying conversations that both of these programs seem to have at the beginning of the season is, we think we can get to 5. They're having that conversation again. Obviously, they've gotten off to a wonderful start, and the winner of this one is 80% of the way there with still 5 weeks to play. So both of them probably have a little bit of wind in their sails right now, because they don't have as much pressure as maybe they thought they might have entering this game, maybe at 2-1 or 1-2, where this one doesn't seem as dire as it maybe would have based on where you thought they might be. Because right now, both of those teams at 3-0, obviously you don't want to lose that game, but if you do end up losing it, the sun still rises in the morning, and you're still in pretty good shape at 3-1. So that's takes a little bit of the weight off the game.
I mean, last year Fenwick beat Montini, and then Montini didn't lose again, and they haven't lost again. So, I mean, it kind of tells you that obviously they want to win this game. They'd be huge wins for both teams. It would send them even further up for success in their playoff run. But I think even if they lose, I like these teams a lot coming out of this week. So we'll see. I'm really fascinated by that matchup. Another matchup down closer to your neck of the woods a little bit. We talked about Lincoln Way East for 3 weeks, and for a good reason. They've been as impressive as any team in the state for the first 3 weeks of the season. Oh, by the way, there's a couple other pretty good teams in that district that are both undefeated, and they're playing each other this Friday.
Yeah, you got Lincoln Way West and Lincoln Way Central going against each other. I always think back to, like, in the middle of the summer, they always have a joint practice with the 3 schools, and then they bring in a 4th school to scrimmage it out, and just kind of do those things. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching that scrimmage, and I'm looking at myself and I'm saying, you know what? If I didn't have jerseys, different colored jerseys on these programs, I'm not sure how I would tell the difference. They all have, they have programs with coaching staffs that have some intermingling, if you know what I mean. Like that, some of these guys have some Lincoln Way East roots where they come over. They have other guys that have worked with them. The Lincoln Way East coaching tree is pretty fertile, if you know what I'm saying. They've spread the branches. There are some guys out there in different programs. Lincoln Way Central coach Dave Woodburn is directly from that program. That's where he came from. So you can see a lot of similarities in those programs and the way they work and the way that they believe successful football gets done. Like I said, it'll be a fascinating game to see this. 5 miles separates the 2 schools. Some of these guys are, live, yards from one another on the district line. I mean, so they know each other. I mean, the coaching staffs are obviously, they want to beat the other one, but they're deep friendships on both sidelines. It's a great matchup, and now it looks like these two teams are. They're still behind Lincoln Way East on the food chain, but they're in the conversation now. They're 2 programs that are going to be in the 7A playoffs. I guarantee they make some noise when they get there. It's going to be real interesting to see who gets there, because we've talked about this several times. It is a razor-thin margin between these 2 teams, to be completely honest with you. I think both of them have their strengths. Both of them have limited weaknesses, and it makes for a potentially really, really good football game.
I mean, there are 2 programs last year that, if the Michael Vanderleeuwen-Guerin experience for Batavia did not happen in the playoffs, either of those teams could have been playing for the state championship in 7A. I mean, those 2 teams both led Batavia in the second half down to the wire. Tells you how good where they're at.
Yeah, and Lincoln Way West in their game, I was at that game. It felt like they were dominating that game at halftime, and then like you said, the tornado happened, and there it was. But it was one of the more remarkable second half comebacks I've ever witnessed. But putting that aside, neither one of these two programs has let them let that dysfunction eat them up when they lost those games, because they have come back strong. They have built in a mold that works and is repeatable, and both of them have some very good, talented players on both sides of the football that will surely impact that game. So just a really, really fun one that I'm fascinated to see how it plays out, because I hate to keep repeating myself, razor thin margin between these two teams. I think it's going to be a heck of a football game, and that's really what it comes down to. I think that's a really, really good one. If you're in that general area and you're interested in high school football, that is a great one to pick. If you have no general allegiance to anyone else that you need to go to that game, that would be a wonderful game to go watch, I think.
Yeah. So if you're high school football on Saturday afternoon, the West Suburban Silver is for you this weekend. A couple fantastic matchups in that league. Hinsdale Central, who almost beat Downers Grove North last week, they go to Lions, who's undefeated. Really good matchup there. And then the other matchup, the one I want to discuss, interesting matchup, Downers Grove North, undefeated. They go to Glenbard West, who's also undefeated. Both of these teams, a little bit of storyline that's going on right now. Both of them were without their starting quarterbacks. Last week, and for Glenbard West the previous week as well. AJ Rayford missed the last couple weeks. For Downers Grove North, they were without the Minnesota recruit Owen Lansu. It would appear, we don't have all the information and stuff, a little tight-lipped, that Owen Lansu, they hope that he comes back this year, but it sounds like that's going to be still a little bit later in the season type situation. AJ Rayford, maybe a little bit more optimistic that we're going to see him back in uniforms soon. That being said, no matter who's on the football field, it has a makings for a really good matchup. And for Glenbard West, I feel like they're kind of reestablishing themselves this year. I feel like Saturday might be their chance to maybe plant the flag again in the West Suburban Silver that, hey, we're back. Downers Grove North has handled them pretty well the last couple of years in that league, and they're back in Duchamp Field. It should be a good one. I expect a good, nice, low scoring 41-40 game.
Yeah, it's one of when you talk about the quarterback situation, it's interesting. I saw Glenbard West in week 2. They still didn't have AJ Rayford. I thought they did a nice job of tailoring the game plan to make sure that they weren't putting too much on the backup quarterback in that situation, not asking him to do anything over and abound. But when he was asked to execute, he did, and he did a really, really nice job in that game. So I think if that's the way they have to go in this one, I'm sure Glenbard West is confident that the team can get behind that and try to make that happen in a positive light. For Downers Grove North, they've been dealing with this Lanzu thing for a week and a half, 2 weeks now, almost 2 full weeks, and they've figured out a way to get it done too. So it's probably going to be one of those situations where the dam's going to break on one side or the other here. But I do expect it to be a very strong competitive game. I might not go 42-41, but I could see how we could get into a little bit of a rock fight between these two if possible.
This looks very much like a rock fight to me. Those two teams have shown that they can play good defense. They both can run the football. It's on a grass field on a Saturday afternoon, Duchamp Field. Yeah, I'm very fascinated to see how that one turns out, again, no matter who is on the field. Steve, before we get out of here, any matchups, outside of the Chicago area, smaller schools, south of Route 80 types you're looking at?
There are a couple. It's not necessarily south of Route 80, but Prairie Ridge and Burlington Central is pretty interesting to me. We talked a little bit about it with Joe. That's one where you kind of got Prairie Ridge. That's kind of the elite of that conference. A little bit of an upstart in Burlington Central, at least in terms of the Fox Valley. This is kind of the first time that they've made a real run at the top of the mountain. They've been a little bit better over the last couple of years, but this might be the first opportunity for them to say, okay, we're going to make a run to try to be king of the mountain here, because while they've been in the Fox Valley, that simply hasn't happened. They were a good program back before they were in the Fox Valley. They've had some success. They've been They've been ranked highly in the AP polls, but that's a school that's grown in size. So now they're kind of going up in weight class. And I think this is the first time that I really feel like they're punching at that weight class and trying to make their mark. So that one's that I'm really interested in ferreting out. There's so many of those 3-0 games around the state. I could probably keep us here all afternoon talking about why they're interesting. But I think there are also underlying, I think there are quite a few of those games out there between 3-0 teams and 2-1 teams, where I feel like maybe the 2-1 is actually the favorite because of maybe the lightness of the schedule to the 3-0. So I think there's going to be a pretty substantial hit to that list of undefeated teams, which currently resides well over 100 teams. I think we're going to get way more than the 16 that have to fall because we have 16 3-0 matchups. So I think that list will be dwindled down significantly because there's a lot of teams out there that I think are on that list that are pretty vulnerable against the opponent that they're playing this week.
No doubt about it. A lot of good stuff coming up on Friday night and in Saturday afternoon. A lot of good stuff on Friday Night Drive. Again, you want to check out our podcasts. JT Petaldy and Eddie Griffey will be back tomorrow on the South and West podcasts. Soucie, I was listening to you and Mason's Kankakee area podcast this morning. A lot of good stuff coming up. And then Steve will be back on Friday night with Matt Rodewald for our live stream. We're going to get out of here. Again, for Steve Soucie, I'm Josh Welge. You all have a good Wednesday afternoon and a good week 4.